Love makes people unpredictable, and if I can't predict people, I am useless.
Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Will. Well, the boys may be ending, but we're not done with the boys. And in this video, we're gonna go into the physiological facts about another character. Let's dive into the facts about Sister Sage. Let's get to it.
There's no one who hates Homelander more right now.
Could you be sure?
Because people are fucking predictable.
In a world where all Supes are defined by their physical capabilities, Sister Sage stands out like a sore thumb. Sister Sage is the smartest person alive in the boysverse, and that statement isn't the Reed Richards kind. Unlike most comic book geniuses, Sage's intelligence is her only power, not something tacked on to a supersuit or a rubbery physiology. So in this video, we'll be taking a look at her physiology and breaking down why Compound V affected her body differently from literally every other Supe that exists. Without further ado, let's get right to it.
And just when it looked like he might move on with someone else, you finally f***ed him.
How has Compound V fundamentally rewritten her brain's biology? How did having this brain inside a child's body shape her development? Most Supes in the boys are built for escalation, not deterrence or diplomacy. With every new generation of Supes, Vought's primary concerns are enhancing physical traits to their absolute limits. Stronger muscles, harder skin, bigger explosions, that kind of thing. Usually, a Supe's biology pushes their formerly human bodies outward into spectacle and awe that Vought can swoop in and control with their talent management systems. But Sister Sage is different, because in her body, Compound V didn't target her entire physiology as it does in most Supes. It hyper-focused on her brain and evolved it to a level that hasn't been seen or heard of before or after her creation. Human brains are immensely powerful organic processing systems. Computers were created as an attempt to replicate a human mind's processing power without the filter of emotional bias. But the difference between computers and brains is the fact that the former is heavily constrained by biology, where you can keep a computer hale and hearty by simply replacing damaged or underperforming parts from its central processing unit. You can't do that with a brain, at least not yet. All human minds follow a general pattern of growth and decay that determine their processing powers. Neuroplasticity peaks early in life, cognitive growth declines with age, and after a certain point in time, human intelligence stabilizes. The brain becomes more efficient at processing, but less radically adaptive to whatever new is thrown at it. And that is where it is most different from a computer. There are hard metabolic limits on how much information the human nervous system can take in and process, especially as one advances in age. But Sage's physiology bypassed those limits entirely because the V didn't just enhance her brain, it evolved it. That word, evolution, implies that there was a structural change in her mind, which makes sense considering V rewrites the genetic code of its carriers. In Sage's case, her mutation gave her a neurological architecture that's completely different from regular people, or even the smartest humans of this world. Her brain behaves less like a mature organ and more like a constantly iterating supercomputer that continuously generates new neural pathways, mental models, and predictive systems that outclass the conventional understanding of intelligence at an astonishing pace. Her prefrontal cortex developed like a weed, not a tree, which is a fancy way of saying that she became far too good at analyzing patterns, solving puzzles, and retaining information for a person of any age. At 11 years old, Sage reportedly cured stage 3 chronic lymphocytic leukemia in 3 days. And this isn't a cold you can cure with some honey and black pepper. Lymphocytic leukemia requires regular treatment and medical intervention, and even then, it is only manageable. Remission is the best case scenario, and stage 3 implies that death is more imminent than in early stage cancer detections. But Sage found a working cure for this condition in just 3 days at an age when the average child is still developing abstract reasoning skills. When she told Victoria Newman that she could stop climate change, she was dead serious, because that's how fast her brain works. And to top it all off, her intelligence curve is still climbing long after normal human cognition would have stabilized, which is around the age of 25. We'll get to how that's happening and why it matters in just a few moments, because first, we need to address how this shaped her childhood. Sage's parents got her injected with Compound V in the hopes that she would improve their financial prospects as a Supe. When they realized that her superpower was being smarter than everyone in the room, which wasn't exactly a marketable ability, they were disappointed. And that disappointment turned into anger and abandonment when she started correcting their grammar and demeaning them for having a lifelong dream of opening opening a yogurt shop, which she predicted would fail at the tender age of 3. They dropped her off at her grandmother's house eventually because she wasn't going to make them any money and they resented her. But her grandmother didn't. She was the only one to see Sage's powers as a gift, and she would often smile and laugh whenever Sage did something smart, like reciting lines from Othello verbatim before she became a teenager. This is why she loved her grandmother to the point that she went ahead and did advanced level research on cancer that most medical professionals wouldn't be able to do. When she presented her ideas to a team of doctors that could have approved, engineered, and administered her prospective cure, she was called adorable and dismissed with impunity, and that was the beginning of her hatred for humanity. We'll get to more on how that particular emotional state corresponds with her brain's physiology in a few minutes, so stay with us until the end of this video. But now that we've established Sage is essentially a walking, talking supercomputer with a prefrontal cortex that's never been seen before, let's now talk about one of the most curious aspects of her V-induced mutation.
Shut up.
You cursed the poor girl.
No.
How does her regeneration specifically prioritize the brain over the rest of the body? Why is she both physically fragile and intellectually unstoppable? Most fictional characters with a healing factor regenerate damage holistically. Their healing factor spreads out across their body evenly and repairs all cellular, vascular, tissue, and structural damage to restore their bodies to its original state. Even the Supes in The Boys have something of a healing factor because their bodies rapidly regenerate cells to repair major injuries and traumatic wounds, like Homelander lasering his own arm open, or Deep getting violated by someone sticking a finger in his gill. But Sage's regeneration doesn't work that way because her healing factor is highly selective. The show repeatedly emphasizes that her brain, skull, and surrounding tissues regenerate with unusual efficiency, while the rest of her body remains comparatively vulnerable. She can survive catastrophic cranial trauma, like self-inflicted lobotomies, which we will get to, and a bullet traveling through her head, like the time MM shot her. Yet she can still die from damage to vital organs like the heart, which Butcher made clear to us during his first interaction with Sage in Season 5. This means that in Sage's mutated physiology, Compound V prioritized cognition over physical survivability, which, consequentially, focuses her healing factor around preserving the brain at all costs. Sage's intelligence is her primary advantage after all. Protecting her neural infrastructure is far more important than protecting muscle tissue or combat durability, and what we think happened in her body is essentially a trade-off. Sage's body traded the suite of baseline physical enhancements that most Supe bodies have, like increased strength, durability, speed, and skin as tough as an armored tank, to turn her brain into the most overperforming organ in the entire series. Her mind doesn't just heal from damage rapidly, it performs neurogenesis at the speed of sound, creating gray matter, new neural pathways, and overall cognitive performance structures inhumanly fast. So, while Sage is among the least physically imposing major Supes in the series, with no laser vision or invulnerable skin or the ability to empathically communicate with fish, she's also the most dangerous because she represents an entirely different kind of threat. Most Supes weaponize force with their gifts, but Sage weaponizes systems, be they infrastructural, organizational, financial, or psychological. She studies every person and organization's motives, vulnerabilities, ideological fractures, crowd psychology, media ecosystems, and institutional weaknesses. Instead of attacking people directly, she manipulates the conditions around them until they destroy themselves. And that's why she's extraordinarily dangerous, because conventional defenses barely apply to her. You can punch, shoot, or plaster a strong opponent into the dirt if they become too much of a problem. But how do you fight someone who already predicted your response 3 conversations ago? Her physical fragility actually reinforces her intellectual superiority. It's because she can't rely on strength that her entire survival strategy revolves around anticipation and manipulation. Her body forced her mind to become sharper, which means her mind isn't a weakness, it's a specialization that caused nearly every major political and social destabilization event in the Boys verse Season 4 onwards. She literally anticipated and planned everything that's happened so far, and though there were a few hiccups along the way, we know this to be true because she knew how Soldier Boy would react to Homelander looking for V1, and she was prepared to cut out her tracking chip and flee Vought at a moment's notice. Soldier Boy was on ice when she came into the picture, so how could she possibly have him in her little Brave Maeve diary as an influencing factor, before she knew he was still alive somewhere? The answer is her specialized mind, which is only as strong as it is because of its extraordinary healing factor. Brain science is not exact in our world, but most studies will tell you that regenerating lost brain cells cannot be done, or at the very least, is difficult to accomplish. Because Sage's brain and its surrounding structures are constantly regenerating, she's always going to have the mental edge over any person alive. But that isn't the most disturbing thing about her. What exactly happens physiologically when she lobotomizes herself? How does brain damage temporarily reset her personality and intelligence? The most disturbing thing about Sister Sage is the fact that she repeatedly damages her own brain on purpose, and we don't mean that in a metaphysical way, we mean literally. The first time the show depicted her effectively performing a controlled lobotomy on herself was when she asked Deep to insert an instrument through her eye socket to damage her frontal lobe, where the prefrontal cortex, aka the logical brain, resides. As soon as the lobotomy is performed, her limbic system, aka the emotional brain, takes over, and her behavior changes dramatically. She becomes looser, less confrontational, less analytical, and more emotionally available. Sage's dialogue in that sequence suggests that she's been doing this her entire life, and Deep just happened to be in the room with her when she was going to do it anyway. This is one of the most biologically revealing details in the entire character, because it's the perfect depiction of how she views her own intelligence, as a blessing and a curse. Sage doesn't lobotomize herself because she hates intelligence or is trying to defend self-harm as a means of self-expression. She does it because constantly analyzing everything is psychologically exhausting, and the lobotomies are the only way she can relieve herself of that exhaustion. It's the only time she can truly relax and let go. Which brings up an interesting point about her personality, actually. Every time Sage lobotomizes herself, her behavior changes drastically. She becomes more childlike temporarily, indulging her baser desires, and using words she would never use if she was operating at maximum capacity. After MM shoots her in the head and she tumbles into Homelander's coup meeting, she's licking melting chocolate off her fingers and using words like boo-boo. When Deep lobotomizes her, she sleeps with him because she too has sexual needs. Every traumatic brain injury temporarily generates a different version of Sage, a version that is simpler, less analytical, possibly even happy. Then a few hours later, the damage is healed, her intelligence returns, and she finds the things she indulged in during her lowered state to be disgusting, like sleeping with Deep. She will always love Taco Bell one way or another, but this repetitive cycle of lobotomy and regeneration confirms that her intelligence is an active neurological stage generated by the physical structure of her brain. When the frontal regions are damaged, her cognition temporarily drops closer to baseline human function, and her personality shifts because the machinery generating her hypercognition has been interrupted. Then regeneration restores the original architecture, and with it, the original Sage returns. This essentially means that brain damage is an on-off switch for her, and while it's true that she can never permanently damage her brain, it's also horrifying that she has to go to such lengths just to feel something. It also doesn't help that her superpower is constant analysis, because it makes even baseline sensory enhancements a mental trap. How do her senses and perception systems push her toward overload? All Supe's sensory perception is enhanced on a baseline level, we all know that. Within the universe of the boys, certain high-frequency sounds are powerful enough to incapacitate all Supes entirely. Perhaps that's why many of them are addicts of one kind or another, because they're trying to dull those enhanced senses and streamline the constant sensory input. But in Sage's case, it's different, because the series quietly suggests that she experiences reality at a level of sensory density far beyond ordinary humans, or even Supes for that matter. Now combine that with her hypercognition and sprinkle analytical accuracy on top of that, and what emerges isn't mere enhanced intelligence, it's total perceptual saturation, which Sage is managing almost constantly. A normal human brain filters enormous amounts of sensory information automatically, as most stimuli are discarded before they reach conscious awareness. But Sage's brain seems to be doing the exact opposite. Her ability to rapidly interpret emotional states through micro-expressions, speech patterns, posture shifts, and behavioral tells suggests that she is retaining and processing vastly more more environmental data than humans normally can, which also means her nervous system is likely operating under relentless cognitive overload and processing inordinate amounts of data every waking second. This could be part of why she has ritualized her lobotomies, because that's how she streamlines the sensory inputs. It's more extreme than consuming drugs, yes, but Sage's regeneration ensures that it doesn't permanently damage her overall capacity to outthink her opponents, so she's fine with it. She is never in physical pain because of the constant overload, but we've all seen how frequently she gets frustrated with the children around her. To her, everyone else is a toy, because she's getting that input from their behavior and her senses. And this brings us to the last point about her physiology that also explains her personal psychology.
Any mouth breather could see you're going through some existential midlife.
Why is her physiology the engine behind her worldview, not just a backdrop? People often interpret Sister Sage's coldness as arrogance, and sure, she's more arrogant than most Supes we've encountered in the series. But psychologically, her coldness might be more of a byproduct of constant overstimulation. Because if your brain perpetually analyzes everyone around you in excruciating detail, where's the space for spontaneity and emotional attachment? For Sage, every interaction is predictable. Every motive is decipherable. And so, nothing can surprise her anymore. She liked reminding us this fact over and over again in Season 5, until Soldier Boy surprised her by giving Homelander V1, which is something we'll address in a few moments. But for now, we need to return to Surprise, because once Surprise disappears, emotional engagement follows at its heels. And that explains her emotional detachment from characters like Deep and Noir too. She slept with them both, but she didn't care about either of them. She just wanted her needs to be satisfied. The only person she actually emotionally connected with was Thomas Godolkin, and it's implied that a major reason behind their connection was their similar level of intellectual prowess. Sage lowered her guard around him because she felt like she'd found an equal, and she never finds an equal, not with her particular brand of mutation. So her entire personality is a consequence of her physiology, and this also applies to her worldview. The leukemia story is not just a backstory, it is the formative experience that led to her apocalyptic ideology. Imagine being 11 years old and solving a medical problem that experts couldn't solve, only to have them dismiss you because you're too young and quote-unquote adorable. That dismissal led to the demise of the only person Sage connected with emotionally and distorted her entire relationship with humanity itself. Children often develop emotionally through social synchronization. They learn identity through interaction with peers and authority figures. But Sage likely never had that, because she was too smart for her own good. Her cognitive development outpaced everyone around her before emotional development had the chance to stabilize, which means isolation was probably inevitable for her. It explains why she was living alone in an apartment crammed with books when Homelander first met her, and it also explains why she was more attached to Thomas Godolkin than he was to her. As she grew up, the isolation and her childhood trauma calcified her hatred of humanity and led her down the path of destruction she's currently following. And the worst part is, her greatest gift is the reason behind it. If you can see everything coming, then nothing can make you feel alive anymore. And all you'll want is to live in a world filled with silence. That's why Sage wants to kill all the people on planet Earth, because she's grown so accustomed to living outside the bubble of normal cognition that she can't tolerate it. That, and the fact that they killed her Gram, which her hypercognition rationalized as a foundational trait present in all humans. She's seen the patterns of violence unfold over history multiple times during her personal study sessions. Why would she want to ensure the survival of a species that doesn't heed its own warning? Ironically enough, her not predicting Soldier Boy handing V1 over to Homelander could be the one incident that humanizes her, because it was something she never saw coming. For all her clever games and her pattern recognition skills, which ensured her that his hatred for Homelander would outweigh his love for Clara, Sage never understood the simple fact that love is illogical by nature. And that's the biggest piece of evidence that her physiology is the engine behind her worldview, not the other way around. While Sister Sage has the most brilliant mind on Earth, it is also a double-edged sword that keeps her from being a part of her own species. and we hope we've given you guys a thorough enough breakdown of her physiology to help you understand why she is the way she is. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more boys content. We'll see you real soon with yet another video. Until then, stay safe and have a good one.